Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another video. We're going to be talking about some forecasts across the United States and some agreement that this time is actually some good news. Man, 2024 seemed like when the models came into agreement, it would always say something crazy or wild or weird. This time, we pretty much have a downgrade all across the board. Still got a big warm up coming up, though, so let's talk about all of that in today's video. But before we do, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you do end up enjoying this video. So last time we looked at the instability, which is where we had some of our biggest disagreements yesterday. Now we're going to have a low pressure system dive into the United States and bring in some instability. And this is the run from yesterday, from the Euro model. Now, we did make a contrast between the Euro and the GFS. The Euro was having an axis of moisture and instability pour into Texas and eventually move off to the east, while the GFS had it more muted to the south and then completely diminishing as it goes into the Gulf of Mexico. And as I push this forward, you can see that the last time we looked at this, even a resurgence of moisture and instability was possible all the way from Florida, potentially even all the way up into Pennsylvania, raising concerns that if this uptrended just a little bit, we could be seeing a tornado threat over here in the eastern United States as well. But the good news with it all is that on our latest Euro model run for our instability, our storm food, which is essential for thunderstorms and even a tornado threat, it's mainly keeping the highest CAPE values in Texas, eastern Texas, and then it dives down to the south, very similar to what the GFS had yesterday, meaning we are starting to get some model agreement on a little bit of a weaker scenario. Still potentially bringing some thunderstorms into the southeast, but we're really not talking about much of a tornado threat at all further on to the east from Texas. But to be fair, this surge of moisture is happening within the 3 to 4 day range, so still some things can change, especially as we get some of our higher resolution models in. So let's kind of go look at our broad pattern here, see what we can glean in the possibilities and scenarios going forward. We're not going to be talking about big shifts, but even what we have on the models right now, even a small one can make a little bit of a difference. So looking at our lows and highs across the United States, the high pressures denoted by this red and grayish white area up here. And then we have this low pressure system here in the blue and green. And as I push this forward, you can see that that low pressure system kind of hangs around and eventually ejects into the southern United States, into Texas. That low pressure system being a little bit further up to the north, not really as deep as it was indicating yesterday on the Euro, which is why we're seeing a lot less moisture advection from the Gulf of Mexico up into the United States. So that's one of the main things that is downtrended here. We have a little bit weaker of a low pressure system, a little bit further to the north also on the Euro, like the GFS had. If you look at the last model run of the Euro, you can see that it was more tightly wound and it also had a little bit more of a lower pressure, leading to a little bit more of that moisture advection, that instability, that storm food buoyancy coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico into the eastern Texas area. There's the main differences between these models and what has changed since yesterday. So overall, some good news, but things can still change. Again, if this low pressure system does get a little bit stronger and we start to see other model agreement on that, we could still see a little bit more of that moisture advection, but I think I'm becoming less confident, even with that being a fact, that this could make it all the way to the East Coast. It does really seem like as this thing pulls up that moisture, it's eventually going to run out before it really gets into the southeast or the eastern coast, but we could definitely still see some thunderstorms out there and some good rain to come in with this storm in the future. Looking at the GFS's solution here, you can see that it has also got a pretty broad low pressure system here. Also seems a little bit positively tilted, almost neutrally tilted trough, which has effects on, whether our winds are more parallel or more perpendicular, which can have indications for spin. We'll be going to look at all of those things in just a little bit, but I did just want to kind of show you guys that the GFS is kind of in the same area here, a little bit broader of a low pressure system than the last time we looked at it. And if we come over here to our surface base CAPE, you can see that the GFS is still holding on to a weaker scenario and then really diminishing that moisture after it moves through Louisiana and really not bringing it anywhere close to the eastern United States, meaning that we might not even see thunderstorms all the way over here at all in the eastern coast. So again, that was always a possibility we talked about yesterday. The main thing that we're trying to figure out here is whether or not the GFS is going to trend towards the Euro or if the Euro is going to trend to the GFS. And as you can see, the Euro has trended towards the GFS, although the GFS is still definitely a weaker scenario, putting into question even the severe weather risks for the day after tomorrow going into the 30th as well. So given the fact that we've seen not only a downtrend on the Euro for future strength of some of these storms, but also in the initial strength, I am starting to question this severe weather risk a little bit here. I still do think that we have a severe weather chance in this green area, but I do feel like this yellow area, this 2 out of 5, a slight risk for severe weather, might get downgraded. And if it doesn't, it's going to be a very isolated and conditional threat for damaging winds and hail, with the potential still, a small potential nonetheless, for tornadoes. So I do think that the tornado potential still is possible with this storm, but it's definitely going to be on the low end of the risk. I'm talking about anywhere from McKinney, Dallas, Waco, Killeen, Austin, San Antonio, San Angelo, and Abilene needs to be watching out for severe weather. And then moving on from the 30th to the 31st, you can see that San Antonio, New Braunfels, Austin, College Station, Killeen, and Waco are also in a slight risk. This has gotten a little bit smaller since yesterday and moved further to the south. And I just got this feeling that if we continue to see these downtrends on these models, it could spell even more good news, even for the state of Texas, where the beginning of this severe weather threat could happen. I would continue to still watch forecasts, though, if you are in any of these severe weather risks going into the future, just in case we get a little bit more a little bit more instability and earlier on, and that ends up leading to a little bit more of an elevated tornado risk, especially on this day. But again, we are seeing those downtrends all the way across the board. If that continues, that trend change all the way into tomorrow, this severe weather threat's probably not going to be much to talk about, to be honest. That's how it goes sometimes. You got to monitor the trends and see what could happen. Always state the possibilities and scenarios. Yesterday, the Euro was saying tornadoes could be possible all the way up into this region. And now we're questioning whether or not we'll have tornadoes down here in Texas, with this area most likely experiencing rain, either or thunderstorms. It's only been a day since the last time we talked. So that really goes to show sometimes in the long range, just past 5 days, these models can struggle. Now, looking at the entirety of the United States with the current conditions, this is real-time radar right now. You can see that it's pretty much cleared out. For the most of the Northeast going into the Great Lakes, we do have an area of snow coming through. We'll eventually bring some extra snow down into Minnesota, Wisconsin, also into Michigan, eventually pouring into areas, New York and the Northeast, where we're going to be expecting maybe a little bit of heavier accumulation further down the line with some lake effect snow possible over there. We'll be talking about that in just a little bit as we go over our short-term forecast. So some rain hanging on down here in the southeast into Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina. And then back over here, we are starting to see that low pressure system move out of California. And eventually we're going to start to see those snow chances and rain chances start to pick up here in northern Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and then also going into Colorado as well. Believe it or not, we have red flag warnings over here in Nebraska, where we're watching out for a chance for some fire weather. We're going to have sustained winds between 15 to 20 miles per hour and very low relative humidity. So keep an eye out there if you see some smoke. Just know those fires can grow, and if you're downwind and the wind is blowing in your face, there's a chance that that fire could move towards you, so you might want to check in on your local authorities or watch duty, which is the perfect act to watch out for fires on, as it updates with great information if you have a fire nearby. Looking at the short term here for the next 2 to 3 days, you see that we're going to be expecting that snow to sink down here into parts of New York, bringing in actually a moderate band of heavier snow into the coastal regions there of New York, going into Lake Erie and parts of Ohio as well. That's going to continue throughout the day, bringing some snow squalls eventually as we move into 5 a.m. in the morning hours on the 28th. It's going to push down to the south and east, and eventually we're going to see another area or shot of snow possible up there in northern Michigan, moving down into areas like New York, northern Pennsylvania, also potentially getting some snow all the way to Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, and southern New Hampshire, with some more backside lake effect snow there for Michigan and the UP of Michigan as we move into 4 a.m. on the 29th. And that continues to push down to the south and east, still bringing some isolated snowfall amounts up there. Further down to the south and west, you can see that that low pressure system is going to continue to spin up there in California, move into the Arizona area, potentially bringing some light rain on the further south, thing really probably measurable there, but eventually that snow is going to start to increase here as it moves into Utah, parts of Colorado and northern New Mexico, and eventually, we can see that get some pretty heavy snow, especially up there in the mountainous regions. But man, look over here down in Texas. The NAM is kind of out of range of our first severe weather event, but look at this, man. Just widespread rain. It's a lot of convection. It's going to be hard for severe weather to get started here, given that our instability is just so low. So definitely got some huge question marks here, even for our slight risks of severe weather that are in the 3 to 4 day range. All right, now talking about our temperatures, as you can see, it's going to be a little bit warmer for a lot of folks as we move into tomorrow on around the 28th at 3 p.m. You can see that we're going to be all the way up into the 50s, all the way as high as South Dakota, moving into Iowa, then also also in the southeast, widespread 50s and 60s, especially near the coast. Might even see some 70s in some spots in Florida and southern Texas. Got some below freezing temperatures holding on up there in Maine, also in the New England area as well. But generally, we're in a warming kind of February thaw right now, where it's going to stay nice and warm in the southeast and potentially in the southeastern East Coast. There's still some 50-degree temperatures hanging on the 29th at 3 p.m., moving up into Nebraska and South Dakota. And pushing this forward, you can see that warmth continues to build, especially as we get that low pressure system move through the area, bringing in some potential 50-degree temperatures all the way up into southern Illinois, Indiana, and maybe even potentially southern Ohio as well. Those 50s still hanging on over here in Nebraska and South Dakota. It's pretty impressive. Maybe even trying to get close to 60-degree temperatures as we move into the first at 3 p.m. And you can see those really cold temperatures that we've been talking about all for January are really nowhere to be found. If we really push this into the future, we are watching for a subtle signal here for things to cool down again up here in the northern United States, while our warmth over in the Ohio Valley and the southeast continues to hang on as we move deep into the early portions of February. And you can really just continue to push this out. And you have to go all the way to the 9th, folks, to see any significant cool down. And even then, it's nothing compared to what we just dealt with in January. So given that this is over 10 days out, not going to really take this seriously at all. You shouldn't. I've heard some people really talking about this, saying it's going to be really cold. And, they're using words like it will be instead of maybe or possible. But I wouldn't even use possible. It's just this is something that you really shouldn't even be looking at or taking seriously. So I just want to caution you guys on this mid-February big cool down. Now, it's certainly possible. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but we're just way too far out to take it seriously. The overall pattern in which is actually going to affect you that we have confidence as is that it's going to warm up pretty decently here in the southeast going into the Ohio Valley, pretty much all the way across the board here in the eastern United States. But that's going to be it for me, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate you guys continuing to come back time and time again to watch my updates. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.